Okay. Got it. Welcome, everyone, to the informational meeting for the Texas Completion Repayment Grant Program RFA grant competition. So for our agenda today, we'll be going over some introductions and a welcome. We'll be going over the RFA highlights and some key forms, the application form and the budget request form, and we'll have some time for question and answer at the end. But this time I want to go ahead and introduce my colleagues who will be co-hosting today's webinar. Keelan?
There we go. My apologies. I couldn't find the unmute button. My name is Keelan Morgan. I serve as the assistant director and assistant director in the Division of College Readiness and Success here at the coordinating board.
Waylon?
Thanks, Suzanne. Hi, I'm Waylon Matoir. I am the manager for college completion initiatives here at the coordinating board as well. And just a few moments to address this initiative particularly. I work closely with some college no credential population, so I just want to let everyone know that it's a great opportunity. I know we'll talk more about this throughout this webinar specifically, but just think about the purpose and the greater good that it serves for our students in the state of Texas. We know that it's minimum amounts that sometimes prevent these students from re-enrolling, to be re-engaged, to continue their efforts to complete that degree. So just keep that in mind. And that's what this purpose is for, to try to get these students back and on the right track to complete their degree, or even to continue their efforts to stay enrolled to complete that degree. We've participated, if you're one of those institutions that worked with myself or others with the GradTix grant, Degrees When Due, the college readiness or completion models, the reskilling and upskilling, all of these grants and initiatives complements this initiative that we're discussing here today. So I highly encourage it. Take advantage of the opportunity to support not only your institution, but also these students at the end of the day. So we'll be here. I'm glad to be a part of this work, and I'm sure we'll have questions and answers later. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Waylon.
Yeah.
Okay, and the purpose of today's webinar is to highlight some important components of the RFA process and address related pre-award questions from potential applicants. We do want to let everyone know that institution-specific and post-award operational types of questions will be addressed in a future webinar specifically for the awarded grantees. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and cover some key highlighted areas for the actual RFA. So I know many of you have had the opportunity already to look and review the RFA, hopefully, and look at parts of it and components of it. And so what I'd like to do now is just to highlight key components. So as you know, there's an inquiry deadline, a couple of important deadlines that we put on the top page. Inquiry deadline. These are questions as you go through and as you work with your partners and your collaborators for this grant competition, and as you're writing your actual responses, there will be some questions that come up that we didn't answer today in today's webinar. So the opportunity to ask those questions, and I'll highlight exactly how to do that, the process for asking questions we'll highlight in the actual RFA. But the inquiry deadlines, or the deadline for those questions, is on December 10th. And notice all of our deadlines are 11:59 p.m. Central Time. And then, of course, the actual application deadline is December 17th. And I know that's a really short turnaround. Hopefully, you'll find that the application is very straightforward. Keelan will be talking about that in more detail in a little bit. But we hope that you'll be able to submit your applications by December 17th. And we know that most institutions are on a holiday break after that, but we do hope to have the award announcement on or before January 4th. So when everyone returns from the holiday break, we do hope to have that award ready at that time. So I'm going to kind of continue to scroll through. Of course, there's the table of contents. And you'll see us talk about this Texas Completion Repayment Grant Program. We've shortened that just to call it the Completion Grant Competition or the Completion Grants. And really its main purpose is to continue the ongoing expansion and scaling of supports for students with some college no credential. So specifically targeted for that population of students, but also for current students or all students who have had their post-secondary education disrupted by the pandemic. So this application, of course, is the Completion Grant Competition, and eligible applicants, and I'll talk more in detail about this, but include both public and private institutions of higher education in Texas, and it is specifically to address students' institutional financial holds and other related institutional level student debt. Notice this does not have to do with student loans. Okay, so this is debt held at the institution. And we know that this program is urgently needed for economic recovery due to the pandemic, and of course, to ensure a future competitive workforce in Texas. And it is provided through the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, and it is allocated specifically for this purpose. So here we're talking about eligible applicants that will utilize these emergency education relief funds, we'll call those GEAR funds, to clear institutional level outstanding student balances, such as accumulated fees, institutional level financial holds, or other related arrears of up to $1,000 per eligible student. And the funds are to be used by the institution, first of all, as a recruiting tool to incentivize students with the Some College No Credential group to return to post-secondary education and complete their certificate or degree programs. And here I just want to highlight these students with Some College No Credential can return to your own institution, or it may have been a student who incurred the debt at your institution but would like to attend another institution. Secondly, as a means to allow students who seek to return to higher education access to their transcripts. That's really important because many of these students do have financial holds that prohibit them from accessing their transcripts that they need in order to attend another institution and continue on and complete their educational degrees and certificates. And thirdly, to support the retention and persistence of current enrolled students to meet their academic goals and complete certificate and degree programs. And here, I'm not going to go in detail, but as you can see here, we've got our program authority outlined. And I am the point of contact, and you can see where we have my email address there and also a phone number, the best way to contact me. Now, notice this is not, those of you who may be familiar, and I know we have a lot of communications with folks across the state of Texas. This is not my personal email, so it's very, very important. Please direct all inquiries and communications using the CRI email address. So that's CRI@highered.texas.gov. Do not use my work email. So it would be to the CRI, and this is so that we can definitely, be able to document all of the communications officially. And if you do have any questions also, you will see my phone number there, and you're welcome to also call if you have any questions. So inquiries, that there's a section right there that really says that all inquiries have to be directed to me, to the point of contact. And we ask that applicants and any prospective applicants do not discuss the application, this RFA, with any other coordinating board employees unless authorized by me. And it's very important that you comply with this requirement. Any information deemed by the coordinating board to be of importance and general interest will be sent in the form of an addendum to the RFA to all applicants who have submitted the application. Next section is the actual award summary. And here what we have, and of course, this is all contingent upon the final approved gear funding that is available for this purpose, but we expect to award grants based on the anticipated number of students an applicant expects to serve. And that is, of course, as I mentioned earlier, up to $1,000 per eligible student. And you can also use grant funds for marketing, recruiting, student support services, and other related costs. And the requested awards should fall within a range of $75,000 to $250,000 per applicant. But we also allow applicants who would like to request an amount that is in excess of $250,000 to give them an opportunity to do so, but they need to provide a compelling justification, and that is part of the application. You'll see a point in the application where you have the opportunity to do that. So here we have our award schedule, and that's just to provide some guidance so that applicants know, what we're looking to intend, what we're anticipating to award. We have 5 spaces for a $250,000 award, up to 10 spaces for $125,000, and 24 spaces for $75,000. And remember, the most important thing is this last sentence: awarded funds must be expended by September 30th, 2022. So that is a shortened time frame. And again, repeating here, grant period would be the execution of the grant award on or before January 4th, 2022, and concludes on September 30th. And then, of course, as usual, awarded grantees will have 30 days after January 30th to reconcile any outstanding invoices and submit required reports. Here we talk a little bit about selection for funding, and then the application timeline. And there's also appendix that has this timeline as well, with a couple of additional bits of information. Of course, we had the grant announcement that's already passed. Today is the webinar. And then the last day for inquiries is December 10th. The application deadline, as I discussed previously, is December 17th. And we hope to announce the final grantee announcement to have that on or before January 4th, 2022. So applicants are eligible Texas public and private independent institutions of higher education as defined in Texas Education Code, section 61.003, subsection 2, 3, 15, and 16. So if you're wanting to verify whether you are indeed an eligible institution, this is a live link in the RFA. And then of course you can also cut and paste that into a URL address, and that should get you directly to the information that is needed, and you can verify your institution's eligibility. And then of course, funding will be provided to all eligible applicants that provide a plan for and execute the creation, expansion, or redesign of a program that seeks to support eligible students impacted by the pandemic by clearing institutional level outstanding student balances, such as accumulated fees. This program should identify eligible students who have outstanding balances at the applicant's institution in order to recruit and enroll stopped out students with some college no credential to complete a certificate or degree program at the applicant's institution, to release transcripts of stopped out students with some college no credential so they can enroll at another eligible institution and complete a certificate or degree program, and or to support the retention and persistence of current enrolled students to complete a certificate or degree program. So here's the section on student eligibility. They have to be a Texas resident. And again, anything that you see in blue here, these are live links, or you can cut and paste that section into URL and Google that information. So they have to be a Texas resident, full or part-time enrollment. That's for current students, but for stopped out students, an intention to enroll. And so the institution should have some sort of a document that verifies that the student does intend to enroll full or part-time. The student's institutional level debt must have been incurred prior to fall 2021. And then the student must meet the requirements of the Texas Education Code Section 5.1 for selective service. That's 5.1.9050, 9095, excuse me. And then the last thing is the student completes an institution application for completion repayment grant aid. Again, the grant program will target funds to clear students' institutional level financial holds or other related arrears of up to $1,000 per eligible student. Grant funds may be applied to support students' re-enrollment or continue enrollment in spring 2022, summer 2022, and fall 2022 semesters. We do know that the grant awards are very close to the beginning of the traditional spring semester, but we also understand many institutions have 2 sessions, if you will, an 8-week in the first part of the spring session, and a second 8-week that happens in the second part of the spring session. So for those institutions, they may not be able to have this ready to go for that first 8-week session, but we hope many institutions will be able to have this possibly ready to go for the second 8-week session for those institutions that do have those 2 8-week sessions. Priority points will be given to 2 specific institutions, minority serving institutions, and also to eligible public institutions of higher education. Eligible applicants submit 1 application, and applicants that are individually accredited may apply as an individual applicant. And again, as we noted earlier, submission deadline is December 17th. Some more information on how to submit. We have a confirmation of application receipt, a little bit about cost of application preparation, and some information about application delivery and late applications, which, as it outlines here, will not be accepted. There are some funding restrictions, and here, this section, we encourage you to read this very closely and ask any questions if you do need some further clarification, but we have typical allowable cost categories and prohibited costs. And if you have any budget changes, that is certainly allowable. And it outlines here in the RFA under what circumstances and the limit for budget request changes. Very important, participation in research and information sharing. And we know that part of what we do here with our grants is going to be very important to the state because we want to be able to share best practices and ongoing capacity building regarding retention and completion of post-secondary students in Texas. So we do ask that grant recipients are required to participate in research and information sharing efforts, including but not limited to additional data collection, surveys, on-site reviews, interviews, webinars, conferences, or regional meetings as determined by the coordinating board. And also an identified, 1 or more identified third-party collaborators that we work with together with the coordinating board. And very important, this section shall survive the end of the grant term or termination. So this may go, this component may be going beyond the September 30th deadline. And of course, if we do have additional funding available for this purpose, we will certainly put that information and make that information available to all of our grant awardees. This next section, I'm not going to go in too much detail. My colleague Keelan is going to go over the application process, but here we talk about the application screening, priority criteria, and then specifically here are the components of criteria for award selection. And again, this will also be covered in the application when Keelan will go over that. We've got a rationale for requested funding, students to be served, the implementation plan or program, the program timeline, allocation of funds to meet project goals. And here we have the two bonus points, as I mentioned, minority serving institutions and public institutions would need to verify whether they are eligible for these additional bonus points. And then the evaluators will make a recommendation of selected applicants to the Commissioner of Higher Education, and the Commissioner of Higher Education then will review those recommendations and make a decision based on that review. And again, here is the application section. Keelan will go over this in more details. And the issuance of the grant awards. And here, some information about funds disbursement, last day of expenditures, again, as we noted, would be September 30th, with an additional 30 days allowed to reconcile all invoices and submit any final reports. Here's a section on monitoring and reporting, and the component that we wanted to highlight here are the reports that are required, the minimal reports that are required. There's an interim report due March 31st, and then a final program report October 29th, and then 2 financial reports, an interim expenditure report, again, March 31st, and a final financial report due October 29th. Of course, these specifics for each of these reports and in a template, all that will be provided in a timely manner to all of the awarded grantees. And then this next section are the terms and conditions that are related to GEAR funding grant awards issued by the coordinating board. I'm not going to go into any of these details here, but of course, we do expect you to read through these. And if you have any questions regarding any section, any components of this section, again, we will try our best to answer. If not, we have a very, very competent legal team that we can consult with regard to any questions in this section here. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll through this. And then we come to a few of Appendix A. We have some important definitions here. The next one is the calendar of events. I mentioned here earlier, we had pulled out some important dates, but here you can see additional dates that we had talked about. And then here is the what the evaluation will be based on. As I mentioned, we have some core elements: the rationale, students served, implementation plan, timeline, and allocation of funds. Those are all maximum of 5 points. And then 2 sections for additional 5 bonus points for eligible applicants for a total of 35 points. And then here is a checklist for the list of required forms and attachments, and an example of a NOGA, Notice of Federal Grant Award, disclosure of lobbying activities, and other pertinent documents that your grant folks will need to make sure and review. And again, we're available for any questions. So that brings us to the end of kind of going over some important points of the RFA. I'm going to hand it over now to my colleague Keelan Morgan, and he is going to specifically focus a little bit more details on the actual application and the budget form.
Started video, but not unmuted, didn't unmute myself. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to take you through kind of like a fast overview of the application itself, as well as the budget form, to just give you a perspective on what we're looking for in the application. So first, you should see the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board's website. And I wanted to walk you through how to get to the links that have the application. So the website for the grant competition. So when you're on the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board's website, Institutional Resources and Programs, you'll scroll down to Institutional Grant Opportunities, and voila, it's the first thing that you see, Texas Completion Repayment Grant Program. When you click that link, so you'll see over here, the request for applications is here, but I encourage you to click this link and it goes directly to the page for the grant. And it has all of the important information related to the RFA process. And where I'll own into for today is under grant application information. Again, you'll see you have the request for applications, you have the application and the budget request form. When you click the application, it'll open up in a nice PDF and you can download this and you can actually insert your responses directly into the form. Select highlights of the form. I'm not going to spend much time on the first section. It's pretty self-explanatory. Contact information for the applicant institution, deadline, additional contact information. This is very important right here as well in section 2. For your contact information, you must complete both sections, a primary contact and a secondary contact. We understand that people take additional opportunities, they leave institutions. So we really want to maximize the communication, the people we have access to with communicating on behalf of the grant. So you'll have a primary contact and a secondary contact. And in advance, if you're thinking, oh, well, is that the principal investigator or PI and co-PI? It could be if that secondary contact is someone from your grants office. It's however you want to set this up particularly. In section 3, you'll indicate the requested grant amount, and Suzanne skimmed through this in the RFA overview. So you'll just put an X in the box for the size of the grant that you wish to apply for. And if it is the last one, the $250,001 plus, you will need to provide the compelling justification in the box listed at number 3.1. Regarding the rationale and students served, so provide a brief description of applicants' rationale for pursuit of the grant funds, student population, institution data, and other relevant information to make a compelling case for the institution's pursuit of grant funds, and optimal use to incentivize stopped out and current students to continue pursuit of their academic goals and complete their certificate and degree programs. So here, and again, you will have to make wise use of the characters that you have available to you. It's a 250-word maximum. This is the blueprint. We're not going to need to know, and this is respective to all of your responses. It's not going to entail every little thing that you're going to do. However, it's going to give us a strong framework for what it is that you will be utilizing these funds for, which is pretty a narrow scope, and as well as how you will market this program to those eligible students to utilize these funds. And you'll put that there. Students served, provide a brief description of the applicant's creation, expansion, or redesign of a program that seeks to support eligible students impacted by the pandemic, clearing institutional level outstanding student balances such as accumulated fees. The applicant description should include a rationale for an anticipated number of students to be served as broken down by stop-out students and current students in spring 2022, summer 2022, and fall 2022 semesters. Also include the anticipated average institutional level debt amounts to be cleared for each semester. So you'll see there are 2 boxes associated with this response. The first is the first part, and then the second, we've broken this out into a table so you didn't have to figure out how to submit this to us in a narrative form. So that work is already done for you. The second part of the question where you will just complete the table that's provided. However, regarding the explanation of your creation, expansion, or redesign of a program, we really want to understand that you have the capacity to not only receive these funds, but get them out the door, because as my colleague Suzanne said, we're working on a very short timeline and all of these funds have to be utilized by September of 2022. So we have to you have to provide a strong understanding that you have an existing program or the program that you're going to stand up is capable of utilizing the funds in the manner in which they can be used. And then complementing that, the implementation timeline and funds. So your implementation plan, providing a brief description of the goal and main activities of the plan, and again, of an existing program or the program that you're going to stand up that meets the requirements as described in the request for application. It's including how you're going to assess the student eligibility process and your institutional process to repay eligible institutional student level debt. The description indicates the proposal addresses a planning and engagement or an existing program, again, to expand, redesign, or scale something that's existing. The description provides specifics about the recruitment, marketing, and onboarding for eligible stopped-out students and identification of eligible current students as an incentive for them to continue enrollment. So here I'm focusing on that marketing piece. How are you going to get the information out to your students regarding this particular opportunity? And last, the description also addresses the level of institutional commitment and support awarded to meet student academic goals and certificate and degree completion. So this can't be a, a boutique program where, oh, the Office of Student Involvement really wants to do this and we're going to apply for it, then figure it out. In advance, you're going to have to give us a little bit on what's the institutional administrative support for this program, because it's going to take the whole village on your campus to not only stand up this program, particularly if it's a new initiative, and really if you're scaling, it's still going to take those same players that you've been utilizing. However, in that response, you'll have to give us a foundation, or you'll have to give us narrative to how you're going to do this. The program timeline, you'll have to provide a brief description of the program's timeline that clearly indicates program activities, estimated duration, completion associated with the program, and the grant period. Activities in the timeline link back to the program description outlined in section 5.1. And if a planning engagement is defined, the timeline must ensure the program is implemented and the funds are distributed within the grant period. And I'll start with the latter part of this paragraph. You have to ensure that your program is designed to have these programs expended again by the end of the grant period. That's really, really important. If not, unfortunately, most likely it won't help you in your quest to receive these funds if your plans are, we're going to be planning all the way up until September of 2022, and we're trying to implement in spring of 2023. That won't work. So you'll have to make sure that the activities and the engagement that's planned falls within the grant period. And that's inclusive of the distribution of these funds to the students for the purposes defined in the RFA. Going back to the first part of this paragraph, so clearly indicating that your program activities, the estimated duration and completion associated with the program and the grant period. So we want to know, what are those critical steps? So if you laid this out in an A, B, C, D, E, so to speak, what are those critical steps for you to enhance, scale, or stand up this program to complete the priorities of this request for applications? And you'll do that there. And then here, kind of like as I gave you the A, B, C, D, E, you can do that in the table provided below as well. And the allocation of funds to the project goals, providing a brief description of how the budget is structured to maximize the impact available funds and limits or excludes direct or indirect administrative costs to administer the grant award. The primary purpose of this program is to provide students with funds to clear those institutional level debts. I'll leave that there, but you should be taken away from this that it's not a overly administrative driven program where oh, we need 3 administrators on the books for this program to oversee it. The vast majority of your funding should be allocated to direct funds to clear institutional debt, along with, again, definitely include funds to market this opportunity to students. And I'll highlight those components in the budget form as well. And last but not least, as Suzanne said, there are priorities associated with this grant award and respective to checking the appropriate boxes here. And now I'll shift over to the budget form. And you'll see it here, pretty straightforward. So you have section 1, the budget overview, and this is the aid to eligible students. You'll put that amount there. The data administration and reporting. This is where I was saying it shouldn't be heavy in administrative overhead. However, we do understand with the components that Suzanne talked about in terms of the requirement to not only track these funds, but report back to us, there will be some designated administrative oversight that's dedicated to this program, and that will be for that personnel. This will be listed there. And then the third line, marketing and outreach. And the fourth line, other direct costs. And I know in advance you're asking me, well, what can be included in other direct costs? Other direct costs is kind of like that catch-all line item for expenses that are associated with the allowable costs as defined in section 5.2.1. However, we haven't specifically listed them there. And if you have a specific question regarding an allowable cost, feel free to utilize the inquiry protocol to ask that question. In section 2 of the budget request form, your budget narrative. And here, aid to eligible students, you will justify the amount that you're asking for in section 1. So ideal responses for your budget narrative, you will give us a clear indication of well, our average student debt is this. We anticipate to impact this many students, hence why we're asking for this much aid to eligible students. And respective to the lines below with data administrating and reporting, you would want to include what administrative costs are associated with this line item, time and effort for any staff that will be allocated to the grant that you're requesting funds for. And if you have institutions we work with across the state have varied levels of institutional report related to reporting or support related to reporting. So if indeed you need additional or you would like to request funds to support the reporting requirements, you would list that time and effort and those specificities there as well. Fringe benefits, those will be related to the data administrating and reporting. And I apologize, I just noticed that the fringe benefits line item is not included as a budget category. We actually have a revised form that will be dropped out on the website later today. However, feel free, if you've already started working on this and you're capable of doing it, adding the line item to section 5. The RFA section, the budget form section 1 yourself, but it should mirror the line items in section 2. Marketing and outreach, I kind of gave you pros to what should be included there. And again, then other direct costs. And that's a pretty straightforward explanation of the forms that are associated with the grant competition. And at this time, I'm going to unshare my screen and I'm going to yield the floor. And we have a number of people, we have 164 people on the call. However, I'm going to do my best to answer any questions. And again, The questions that we're limiting to answers for this session are pre-award questions. So if you have the hypothetical question about your institution's operation, if you get funded in terms of the complexities of, let's just say, maybe standing up your program, those questions will be addressed in a later webinar specifically for the funded grantees. So with that, I would say do the best to raise your hand, and myself and Waylon would do our best to acknowledge those. And I see, I believe it's Dr. Rekasner, I believe. And then we'll go to Hampton.
Hi, I have just a couple of clarifying questions. So if we receive reskilling funds, can we still apply for this?
Yes.
And then the second thing is regarding the description of our processes for the application, that there's a component that says students have to complete an application. Can you talk a little bit about what that process should look like? Because I know for reskilling, one of our challenges is getting students to complete an application to get the support. So can we be creative and innovative about that? Or please explain what that should look like.
In response to that, the world is your oyster. Provided that it meets the students, you identify the students and the student has some indication that, so essentially you can identify this whole student population that are eligible for this program, and you'll be marketing to them directly. You may even be casting a wider net for your stop out students as well. So with that, once those students have been identified, there has to be a mechanism in place for them to then engage the institution to receive these funds. What can't happen is institutions just start randomly clearing student balances and the students aren't under any type of awareness that they actually have a responsibility to re-enroll or continue their enrollment at the institution to receive these funds. Does that help? Say, I'm going with DM Hampton.
Yes, on the uses of the money, the third one, to support the retention and persistence of enrolled students to meet their academic goals and complete their certificate and degree program. Is that just to give assistance to existing students, or does it have to be used to do away with a debt?
To do away with the debt. So we do understand, and we have been made aware by a number of institutions that within the pandemic, a number of institutions forewent their normal protocols of not allowing students to register that had existing balances and things like that. So we understand that students might still have a balance from 2 semesters ago, yet they're still currently enrolled. So I got this outstanding balance from 2 semesters ago, yet I'm doing the best I can right now, but I'm still enrolled, but I'm carrying this debt. So in that particular case, the student in the example that I gave, that if they were continuing, they would be eligible to apply for these funds through your institution if you're awarded and have any debt prior to fall 2021 paid under with these funds. However, if the student is currently enrolled and their debt is from fall 2021, these funds cannot be used to clear that institutional debt.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
I'll go to Metcalf.
Hi, just to make sure I understand, this is not specifically just for debts accrued during terms where the COVID pandemic has been happening. This is any debt prior to fall 2021. Is that correct?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And that's where, as my colleague Waylon talked about earlier, this is a prime and fertile ground for institutions to target their stop outs. because if the debt was incurred prior to fall 2021, they would be eligible to receive funds under this program if the institution is awarded.
And that can be for any type of debt. Specifically, if they had a return to Title IV calculation completed and they owe a debt for R224, we can still pay that debt with these funds.
Now you're speaking beyond my comprehension right now. So for that one, what I'll do, if you could submit that specifically through to the CRI email, so we can appropriately address that, I would definitely want to consult with my colleagues over in financial services to ensure I provide you with an appropriate response.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Delisa?
Yeah, so you're talking about any institutional debt. So if we have institutional short-term loans, institutional long-term loans, emergency tuition and fee loans, then we could use it for any of those. So we would need to let the student know in that case that money would go directly to pay that debt, correct? Yes. Okay, and then when you say any outstanding balance, so whatever that balance is, even if Title IV normally wouldn't cover it, if they have an institutional debt, then we could use these funds. I can give you an example. Okay. Any
go
credit.
ahead and provide an example for the record. So just in case I need to, I'm kind of taking mental notes of things I might need to follow up with our financial services office as well. And then if it's something that I feel like, oh, that's real great and we need further clarification, I'll just indicate for you to definitely submit that through our inquiry process.
Okay. We could have students that, had gotten in trouble and they had parking tickets and they have lost their student ID, had dorm damage that they incurred while they were here that possibly then, they haven't been able to pay those things back. And so
That's
they do
all
owe
considered institutional debt.
Okay. And on the RT24 one, just to clarify, and what she's asking that might help in terms of this, many of us, whenever a student has to return money because they withdrew, we recalculate and they owe money back to the financial aid programs, the institution takes on the debt. So they no longer owe the federal government or the state or whatever, they owe the institution.
Oh, wow. And that's a very, thank you for that clarification, because I know oftentimes when, I know Suzanne specifically said, this is not related to Title IV debt, so to speak. So if the institution has taken on that debt, and I still would like for you to submit that particular part of the question via our inquiry process so we can get a written response to that. But just with my understanding, if it's an institutional debt that they now owe the institution, and that's where they would have to pay those funds, this would be allowable. And I want to,
Kaylin,
and I guess that answer your question?
It did.
Kaylin,
Okay.
can I?
And I was
can I
just getting
step
ready,
in?
I saw Charles on here, so definitely he's our guru with financial services at the coordinating board. And then I'll go to another colleague, Dr. Dakota Doman, as well to offer input.
Kaylin, I can confirm that yes, you can use it for that funds because the Title IV it's no longer a Title IV debt, it's an institutional debt at that point.
Say thank you, Dr. Pools. Say Dakota.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Keaton, for calling on me. I was going to say the exact same thing Chad said, and the only thing that I would add is I'm hearing a lot of questions about, hey, can it go to any institutional debt prior to the fall 21 semester, which of course that answer is yes. I just want us to remember we have to document how the student may have been impacted by COVID. So it's kind of, tricky. It's not to say it has to be in the COVID semesters per se. We just have to say, hey, this student was impacted by COVID. So hypothetically, the debt could be accrued prior to COVID happening, but was that student impacted by COVID, which of course, 99.99% of people were impacted by COVID. So I will entrust you all to do a very creative and innovative job of ensuring you tell the stories of your respective students who were impacted by COVID, but just make sure you make that clarification in the documentation. Thanks, Keelan.
Thank you, Dakota. And we have space for the remaining individuals with their hand up. So now I'll go with Ms. Guardiola. Are you still with us, Stevie? Okay,
I
I'll go.
apologize. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, real quickly. So there was a stipulation of debt that was, I'm assuming this is not for new debt. So if a student is a freshman student started in fall of 21 and there already is a hold for them to register for spring, would we be able to apply these type of funds for a student in that situation?
No, again, the debt has to have been incurred prior to the fall prior to the fall 2021 semester.
Got it. Thank you.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Hi, yes. So I actually have two questions. I know the maximum award amount was stated at 1,000. Is there a minimum that we must uphold to? I know at one point with reskilling, there was a minimum, or are we allowed to, you know, whether it's a $100 balance or $900 balance, cover that?
No, this is, we've stated the maximum per student. So the minimum is, I'm sure, all the way down to 1 penny.
Okay, and my second question is, we are also reskilling grant recipient. Can a student receive both supports? If the in this case, if we were awarded, would they be able to get the funding to help eliminate the debt that is preventing them from coming back? And then once they've decided to come back, can they get a reskilling grant to help them with their cost of attendance?
I'm going to take a stab at this question and then ask that Chad follow up if I misspeak in any way, or Dakota. And the answer to my initial answer to that question would be yes, but within the context that in terms of reskilling and upskilling, there are some very specifics in terms of how the funds can be used, in terms of what order the funds can be applied if they're already receiving Pell, additional Title IV aid, and then it has to be a last effort, so to speak. Within these funds, I don't believe we have that. It's just the outstanding balance. So in that particular case, as long as the protocols are being followed and the student qualifies for both, the student would be eligible to receive both in line with the grant protocols. And Chad, definitely jump in if you have anything to add to that particular question.
Could you repeat the question? Because I don't know that I followed it fully.
So I mentioned that we're a reskilling recipient, reskilling grant recipient. And so if we apply for this and we receive it, would we be able to provide the student the support through this grant first to help them clear their balance? And then once they decide to enroll, obviously because they decide to enroll, once they enroll, provide them support through the reskilling as well to help pay for their tuition and fees for the semester.
Thank you. Yes, that makes sense. What Kaylin said was accurate. Yes, you can do that.
And
Thank you very much.
Dakota, I saw you came off mute. Did you have anything to add?
No, once again, I was going to confer with Chad said. You're 100% accurate in your explanation, as long as the student meets the criteria of both grants.
Awesome. Thank you. And David, did you have a question? Because I was like, my hand raises, they were going in order, and I don't see your hand up on yours, but you're next in my queue. Oh, I see it. It's on the right-hand side. There you go.
Up to now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I'm at the library, so excuse me if I'm whispering. Quick question. I know that it's not restricted to COVID related, but is there a preference for COVID? Like, does that give you an added push to receive the funds if it's COVID related, or that has no bear weather towards receiving this grant?
So as part of the application process, that's twofold. The specific in which I believe what Dakota was talking about is once you receive the funds, you have to, once the student applies for the funds, you have to, as an institution, determine or indicate how that student was impacted by COVID to award the funds. However, as the application process, that part, we're assuming the students that you're seeking to serve are impacted by COVID by proxy of you submitting an application under this grant program. But so for us, in terms of submitting an application, that's the automatic that the students were impacted. However, as a reporting piece of this grant, you're required to document how the student was impacted by COVID. And definitely Dakota saved me on that one if I misspoke in any way.
No, Keely, knocked it out the park. You're exactly right.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then we'll go to Jason, and then we're going to end our questions with Christine. Jason?
Thank you, Keelan. I'm trying to wrap my head around the stop out element of the student eligibility because I'm hearing two different things. So what I'm hearing is that the funds can either go to students who have stopped out and they plan to re-enroll, or who have stopped out and they're trying to get a transcript so they can re-enroll somewhere else. Or it also says that it can go to support retention of currently enrolled students, which implies that those students have not stopped out. So it could potentially go to students who have not stopped out. Am I interpreting that right?
Correct.
Okay. And then part two of that question is, for this grant program, is there yet a definition of what a stop out is? Because I know for the reskilling grant, the definition of stop out is a little more specific. It's it means that a student has not enrolled for the most recent long term, and summers are not included as a long term. So I'm not seeing that written in here anywhere. I'm assuming that maybe stop out is a little bit more loose for this program.
I'm sifting the RFA for the definition section, but I definitely want Dakota to jump in on this one.
Keelan, I was just going to say there's no definition for stop out for this specific project. Typically, you know, that's one semester of stopped out that we would consider, even as we look into other initiatives we work with. However, for this, because it also involves students that are currently enrolled, it goes for any students as long as that debt was prior to fall 21.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Waylon.
Yeah.
And our last question of the day will come from Christine.
Hi there. I didn't see anything in the RFP, but I just wanted to confirm, do students need to fill out the FAFSA as any part of this? And if so, do they need to demonstrate need, or is that not part of this?
And for that question, I'm going to volley that over to my financial services guru, Chad.
FAFSA has nothing to do with this piece.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. So definitely, I want to give a big thank you to my colleagues that are still on, Waylon, Dakota, and Chad, for chiming in on the question and answer. And thank all of you for joining us on this afternoon. And again, if you have any additional questions or inquiries, no matter how big or how small, please make sure that you follow the protocol that's established in the request for applications by submitting your inquiry directly to the CRI@highered.texas.gov email address. Again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to receiving and reviewing your applications. You all have a great day.